Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Wow. びっくりしました。Okay. Oh. Hello. Today we're going to read Dracula again. We're going to continue reading it. Wait. Wait, why is the title? Oh, I'll lower it. I just changed the title. Why is it... Wait. What? Oh, come on. No, I just changed the title. Why is it... reset? I changed it to just chatting, and... I'll save it now. Wait, how's my mic now? 今、マイクはどうですか? I changed it to Dracula Part 2. And then this is BARABARA'S Book Club. Episode 3. And everything else is okay. I don't know why the title and the category were wrong. Because I definitely changed those before starting. Is that how you pronounce it? Pronounce what? My name? It's Bara. The A is an ah sound. I started to work on a new character sheet. I think next week I'll start a new manga. I'll start drawing a new manga. One shot. After about 10 seconds. Okay. So last time So this is part 2 of Dracula and episode 3 of BARABARA'S Book Club. Last time we got to chapter 3. We finished chapter 3, so now we're on chapter 4. Okay, Jonathan Harker's journal continued. I awoke in my own bed, if it be that I had not dreamt the Count must have carried me here. I tried to satisfy myself on the subject, but could not arrive at my unquestionable result. To be sure, there were certain small evidences, such as that my clothes were folded and laid by in a manner which was not my habit. My watch was still unwound, and I am rigorously accustomed to wind it in the last thing before going to bed. And many such details, but these things are no proof, for they may have been evidences in my mind that was not as usual, and from some cause or another, I had certainly been much upset. I must watch for proof. Of one thing I am glad. If it was the Count that carried me here and undressed me, he must have hurried in his task, for my pockets are intact, and I'm sure this diary would have been a mystery to him, which he would have not have brooked. He would have taken or destroyed it. As I look around this room, although it has been to me full of fear, it is now sort of a sanctuary, for nothing can be more dreadful than those awful women who are waiting to suck my blood. 18th of May. I have been down to look in that room again in daylight, for I must know the truth. When I got to the doorway at the top of the stairs, I found it closed. It had been so forcibly driven against the jamb that part of the woodwork was splintered. I could see that bolt of the lock had not been shot, but the door is fastened from the inside. I fear it was no dream and must act on the surmise. 19th of May. I am surely in the toils. Last night the Count asked me in the suavest tones to write these letters, one saying that my work here was nearly done, and I should start for home within a few days. Another that I was starting on the next morning from the time of the letter, and a third that I had left the castle and arrived at Bistritz. I would fain have rebelled, but felt in the present state of things it would be madness to quarrel openly with the Count, whilst I am so absolutely in his power. And to refuse would be to excite his suspicion, and to arouse his anger. He knows that I know too much, and I must not live, lest I be dangerous to him. My only chance is to prolong my opportunities. Something may occur which will give me a chance to escape. I saw his eyes something of that gathering wrath which was manifest when he hurled that fair woman from him. He explained to me that post-sure view and uncertain, and that my writing would ensure ease of mind to my friends. And he assured me that with so much impressiveness they would countermand the later letters, which would be held over at Bistritz until my due time and case. Chance would admit my prolonging my stay. That to oppose him would have been create due suspicion. I therefore pretended to fall in with his views, and I asked him what date should I put on the letter. He calculated a minute and then said, the first should be June 12th, the second June 19th, and the third June 29th. I now know the span of my life. God help me. "28th of May. There was a chance of escape, or at any rate being able to send word home. A band of Sizgani have come to the castle and are encamped in the courtyard. These Sizgani are gypsies. I have notes of them in my book. They are peculiar to this part of the world, though allied to the ordinary gypsies all over the world. There are thousands of them in Hungary and Transylvania who are almost outside all law. They attach themselves as a rule to some great noble or boyar, and call themselves by his name. They are fearless, without religion, save superstition, and they only talk of their own varieties of the Roman tongue. I shall write some letters home and shall try to get to them to have them posted. I have already spoken them through my window to begin acquaintanceship. They took their hats off and made defiance in many signs, which, however, I could not understand any more than I could their spoken language. I have written the letters. Mina is in shorthand, and I simply asked Mr. Hawkins to communicate with her. To her, I have explained my situation, but without the horrors which I may only surmise. I would shock and frighten her to death, were I to expose my heart to her. Should the letters not carry, then the Count shall not yet know my secret or the extent of my knowledge. I have given the letters. I threw them through the bars of my window with a gold piece and made what signs I could to have them posted. The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them to his cap. I could do no more. I stole back to the study and began to read. As the Count did not come in, I have written here. The Count has come. He sat down beside me and said in his smoothest voice as he opened 2 letters. The Sizzini have given me letters of which, though I know not whence they come. I shall, of course, take care. See. He must have looked at it. One is from you, and to my friend Peter Hawkins. The other. Here he caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and in the dark look came to his face, and his eyes blazed wickedly. The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed well, so it cannot matter to us. As he calmly opened the letter and envelope in the flame, as he calmly held the letter and envelope in the flame of the lamp till it were consumed, then he went on. The letter to Hawkins, I shall, of course, send on since it is yours. Your letters are sacred to me. Your pardon, my friend. That unknowingly I did break the seal. Will you not cover it again? He held out the letter to me with a courteous bow, handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could hear the keys turn softly. A minute later, I went over and tried it. The door was locked. When an hour or 2 after the Count came quietly into the room, his coming awakened me, for I had gone to sleep on the sofa. He was very courteous, and very cheery in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, "So, my friend, you are tired? Get to bed. There's a surest rest I may not have the pleasure to talk tonight, since there are many labors to me, but you will sleep, I pray." I passed to my room and went to bed, and strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has its own calms. 31st of May. This morning, when I awoke, I thought I would provide myself with some paper and envelopes from my bag, and keep them in my pocket so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity. But again, a surprise, again a shock. Every scrap of paper was gone, and with it all of my notes, my memoranda relating to railways and travel, my letters of credit, in fact, all that might be useful to me. Where I went outside the castle, I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me, and I made search of my portmanteau and in the wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had traveled was gone, and also my overcoat and rug. I could find no trace of them anywhere. This looked like some new scheme of villainy. June. This morning, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed, cudgeling my brains, I heard, without a cracking of whips and pounding and scraping of horses' feet up on the rocky path behind the courtyard. With joy, I hurried to the window and saw drive into the yard 2 great later wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, and at the head of each pair a Slovak, with his wide hat, great nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They also had their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend and try to join them through the main hall. As I thought way they might be opened for them again. Again, a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. Then I ran to a window and cried to them. They looked up at me and stupidly and pointed. But just then the hetman of the Signy came out, and seeing them pointing out to my window, said something at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or agonized entreaty, would make them even look at me. They resolutely turned away. The later wagons contained great square boxes with handles of thick rope. They were evidently opened with ease of the Slovak, which the Slovaks handled them, and which by their resonance as they were roughly moved. When they were all unloaded and packed in a great heap in one corner of the yard, the Slovaks were given some money by the Signy and opening on it for luck. Luckily, we went each to his horse's head. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of their whips die away in the distance. 24th of June. Before morning. Last night, the Count left me early and locked himself in his own room. As soon as I dared, I ran up the window. As soon as I dared, I ran up the winding stair and looked out the window, which I opened south. I thought I would watch for the Count. For there is something going on. The Signy are quartered somewhere in the castle and are doing work of some kind. I know it, for now, and then I hear a faraway muffled sound of mattock and spade. Wherever it is, it must be the end of some ruthless villainy. I had been at the window somewhat less than half an hour, and when I saw something come out of the Count's window, I drew back and watched carefully, and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had on the suit of clothes which I had worn whilst travelling here, and slung over his shoulder the terrible bag which I had seen the woman take away. There could be no doubt as to his quest, and in my garb too. This was some new scheme of evil. He will allow others to see me, and they think, so that he may both have some leave of evidence, and that I have been seen in towns or villages, posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which may be do shall by the local people be attributed to me. It makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I am shut up here, a veritable prisoner, but without that protection of the law which is even a criminal's right and consolation. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time sat doggedly at the window, and I began to notice that there were some quaint little specks floating in the ray of the moonlight, and there were the tiniest grains of dust, and they whirled around and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and a sort of calm stole over me. I leaned back in the embrasure of a more comfortable position, so that I could enjoy more fully the aerial gambling. Something made me start up. A low, piteous howling of dogs, somewhere far below the village, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and floating motes of dust to take new shape to the sound as they danced in the moonlight. I felt myself struggling to awake to some call of the instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and half-remembered sensibilities were striving to answer the call. I was becoming hypnotized. Quicker and quicker danced the dust. The moonbeams seemed to quiver as they went by me, into the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered, till they seemed to take dim phantom shapes. And then I started broad awake, and in full possession of my senses, ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those of the 3 ghostly women to whom I was doomed. I fled and felt somewhat safer in my own room, but there was no moonlight. Where the lamp was burning brightly. When a couple of hours have passed, I heard something stirring in the Count's room, something like a sharp wail quickly suppressed. And then there was silence, deep, awful silence which chilled me. With a beating heart, I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison. I could do nothing, and I simply cried. I sat down and simply cried. As I sat, I heard a sound in the courtyard. Without the agonized cry of a woman, I rushed to the window and, throwing it up, peered out between the bars. There indeed was a woman with disheveled hair, and holding her hands over her heart, as one distressed with running. She was leaning against the corner of the gateway. When she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a voice laden with menace. "Monster, give me child! Give me my child!" She threw herself on her knees, and raising her hands and cried the same words in tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breast, and abandoned herself to all the violence of extravagant emotion. Finally, she threw herself forward, and through the door I could not see her. I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. Somewhere high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of the Count calling in his harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide, the howling of wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured like a pent-up dam when liberated through the wide entrance of the courtyard. Then there was no cry from the woman, and the howling of wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away singly, licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew now what had become of her child, and she was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thing of the night in gloom and fear? "25th of June, morning. No man knows till he has suffered from the night how sweet and how dear to his heart in the eye the morning can be. When the sun grew so high this morning, and it struck the top of the great gateway opposite my window, the high spot which it touched seemed to me as if the dove from the ark had lighted it there. My fear fell from me, as if it had become a vaporous garment which dissolved in the warmth. I must take action of some sort with the courage of the days upon me. Last night, one of my post-dated letters went to the post. The first of the fatal series, which is to blot out the very traces of my existence from the earth. Let me not think of it. Action. It has always been at nighttime that I had been molested or threatened in some way, in danger or in fear. I have not seen the Count in the daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others wake? That he may be awake whilst they sleep? If they could only get into his room. But there is no possible way. The door is always locked. No way for me. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. Where his body has gone. Why may not another body go? I have seen him myself crawl from his window. Why should I not imitate him and go by his window? The chances are desperate. My need is more desperate still. I shall risk it. And the worst, it can only be death. A man's death. It's not a calf's. And the dreaded hereafter may still be upon me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Nina. If I fail, goodbye. My faithful friend and second father. Goodbye. Goodbye, last of all, Mina. Same day, later. I have made the effort, and God helping me, have come back safely to this room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage was fresh, straight to the window on the south side. And at once got outside on the narrow ledge of stone, which runs around the building on this side. The stones are big and roughly cut, and the mortar has, by process of time, has been washed away. In between them, I took off my boots and ventured out to the desperate way. I looked down once, so as to make sure that the sudden glimpse of the awful death would not overcome me. But after that, I kept my eyes away from it. I knew pretty well the direction and distance of the Count's window. and made for it as well as I could. Having regard to the opportunities available, I did not feel dizzy. I suppose I was too excited, and the time seemed ridiculously short till I found myself standing on the windowsill, trying to raise up the sash. I was filled with agitation. However, when I bent down and slid feet foremost into the window, then I looked around for the Count. But with surprising gladness, I made a discovery. The room was empty. It was barely furnished with odd things, which seemed to have never been used. The furniture was something of the same style as that in the south rooms, and was covered in dust, and looked for the key, but it was not in the lock. I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was a great heap of gold in one corner. Gold of all kinds, Roman and British and Austrian and Hungarian and Greek and Turkish money, covered with a film of dust, as though it had lain long in the ground. None of it, that I noticed, was less than 300 years old, and there were also chains and ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them old and stained. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, and since I could not find the key of the room, or the key of the outer door, which was the main object of my search, I must make further examination, or all of my efforts would have been in vain. It was open and led through a stone passage to a circular stairway, which went steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom, there was a dark, tunnel-like passage through which came a deathly, sickly odor, and the odor of old earth nearly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last, I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an old ruined chapel, which had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in two places were steep steps leading to vaults, but the ground had recently been dug over and the earth placed in a great wooden box is manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made search for any further outlet, but there was none. Then I went over every inch of the ground so as not to lose a chance. I went down it, even to the vaults, where the dim light struggled, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. In two of those I went by, but saw nothing except fragments of old coffins and piles of dust. In the third, however, I made a discovery. There in one of the great boxes, of which there were 50 in all, on a pile of newly dug earth, lay the Count. He was either dead or asleep. I could not say which, for the eyes were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and the cheeks had the warmth of life through all their pallor, and the lips were as red as ever. But there was no sign of movement, no pulse, no breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him and tried to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there. He could not have lain there long, for the earthy smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was a cupboard pierced with holes, and there were here and there. I thought he might have taken the keys on him. He might have the keys on him, but when I went to search, I saw the dead eyes, and in them, dead though they were, such a look of hate, though unconscious of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled again up the castle wall. Regaining my room, I threw myself panting upon the bed, and tried to think. Today is the date of my last letter. The Count has taken steps to prove that it was genuine, for again, I saw him leave the castle by the same window, and in my clothes, as he went down the wall at lizard fashion. I wished I had a gun or some lethal weapon so that I might destroy him, but I fear that no weapon wrought alone by man's hand would have any effect on him. I dared not to see him return. for I fear to see those weird sisters. I came back to the library and read there till I fell asleep. I was awakened by the Count, who had looked at me as grimly as a man could, and he said, "Tomorrow, my friend, we must part. You return to your beautiful England. I to some work which may have such an end that we may never meet. Your letter has been dispatched. Tomorrow I shall not be here, but all shall be ready for your journey. In the morning come Siskini, who have some letters of their own here, and have also come some Slovaks. When they have gone, my carriage shall come for you, and shall bear to you the Borgo Pass, to meet the diligence from Bukovina to Bistritz. But I am in hopes I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula." I suspected him and determined to test his sincerity. Sincerity seems like a profanation of the word to write into connection with such a monster. So I asked him to point blank, Why may I not go tonight?" "Because, dear sir, my coachman and horses are away on a mission." "But I would walk with pleasure. I want to get away at once." He smiled. Such a soft, diabolical smile that I knew there was some trick behind his smoothness. He said, "And your baggage? I do not care about it. I can send for it some other time." The Count stood up and said with a sweet courtesy which made me rub my eyes. It seemed so real. "You English have a saying which is close to my heart, for its spirit is that which rules our boyars. Welcome the coming, speed the parting guest. Come with me, my dear young friend. Not an hour shall you wait in my house against your will. Though I am sad at your going, you may so suddenly desire it. Come." With a stately gravity, he, with a lamp, proceeded down the stairs and along the hall. Suddenly he stopped. Hark! Close at hand, the howling of many wolves. It was almost as if the sound sprang up at the rising of his hand. But just as the music of a great orchestra seems to leap under the baton of the conductor. After a pause of the moment, he proceeded in a stately way to the door, drew back the ponderous bolts, unhooked the heavy chains, and began to draw it open. To my intense astonishment, I saw that it was unlocked. Suspiciously, I looked all around, but could see no key of any kind. As the door began to open, the howling of the wolves without grew louder and angrier. Their red jaws, with champing teeth, and their blunt-clawed feet, as they leapt and came through the opening of the door. I knew then that to struggle at the moment against the Count was useless. But with such allies as these at his command, I could do nothing. But still, the door continued slowly. Continued slowly to open, and only the Count's body stood in the gap. Suddenly, it struck me that this might be the moment and means of my doom. I was to be given to the wolves at my own instigation. There was a diabolical wickedness in the idea great enough for the Count, and as a last chance, I cried out, "Shut the door! I shall wait till morning," and covered my face with my hands to hide my tears of bitter disappointment. With one sweep of his powerful arm, the Count threw the door shut, and the great bolts changed and echoed through the hall, and they shot back into their places. In silence, we returned to the library, and after a minute or two I went to my own room and saw the last I saw the Count was his kissing his hand to me. Last I saw of the Count Dracula was his kissing his hand to me, with a red light of triumph in his eyes and a smile that Judas in hell might be proud of. When I was in my room and about to lie down, I thought I heard her whispering at my door. I went to it softly and listened. Unless my ears deceived me, I heard the voice of the Count. Back to your own place. Your time has not yet come. Wait, have patience. Tonight is mine. Tomorrow night is yours. There was a low, sweet ripple of laughter, and in a rage I threw open the door and saw without the three terrible women licking their lips. And as I appeared, they all joined in a horrible laugh and ran away. I came back to my room and threw myself on my knees. It is then so near the end. Tomorrow, Lord help me, and those whom I am dear. "30th June, morning. These may be the last words I ever write in this diary. I slept till just before the dawn, when I woke, threw myself on my knees, for I determined that if the death came, he should find me ready. At last I felt that subtle change in the air, and I knew that the morning had come. Then came the welcome cockcrow, and I felt that I was safe with a glad heart. I opened my door and ran to the hall. I had seen that the door was unlocked, and now escape was before me. With hands that trembled in eagerness, I unhooked the chains and drew back the massive bolts. But the door would not move. Despair seized me. I pulled and pulled at the door and shook it till, massive as it was, it rattled in its casements. I could see the bolts shot, and it had been locked after I left the Count. And a wild desire took me to obtain the key at any risk, and I determined then and there to scale the wall again in the Count's room. He might kill me, but death now seemed happier choice of evils. Without a pause, I rushed to the east window and scrabbled down the wall. As before, into the Count's room. Anyway, it was empty, but that was as I expected. I could not see a key anywhere, but the heap of gold remained. I went through the door in the corner, and the winding stair, and along the dark passage of the old chapel. I knew now well enough where to find the monster I sought. The great box was in the same place, close against the wall, but the lid was laid on it, not fastened down, but with the nails ready in their place, to be hammered home. I knew I must reach for the body. I must reach the body for the key, so I raised the lid and laid it back against the wall. And then I saw something which filled my very soul with horror. There lay the Count, looking as if his youth had been renewed, for the white hair and mustache were changed to dark iron gray, and the cheeks were fuller, and the white skin seemed ruby red underneath. The mouth was redder than ever, for on the lips were gouts of fresh blood that trickled down from the corners of the mouth and ran over the chin and neck. Even the deep burning eyes seemed set amongst swollen flesh. The lids and pouches underneath were bloated. It seems as if the whole awful creature was simply gorged with blood. He lay like a filthy leech, exhausted in his repletion. I shuddered as I bent over to touch him, and every sense in me revolted at contact. But I had to search, or I was lost. The coming night might see my own body a banquet, in a similar way to those horrid three. I felt all over my body, but no sign could I find the key. And I stopped and looked at the Count. There was a mocking smile on his bloated face, which seemed to drive me. This was the being I was helping to transfer to London, where I perhaps for centuries to come might be amongst its teeming millions, satiate his lust for blood, and create new, ever-widening circles of semi-demons to batten the hopeless. The very thought drove me mad. A terrible desire came upon me to rid the world of such a monster. There was no lethal weapon at hand, but I seized a shovel, which the workmen had been using to fill the cases, and lifting it high, struck with the edge downward at the hateful face. As I did so, the head turned and the eyes fell upon me. with their blaze of basilisk of horror. The sight seemed to paralyze me, and the shovel turned in my hand and glanced from the face, merely making a deep gash above the forehead. The shovel fell from my hand across the box. As I pulled it away, the flange of the blade caught the edge of the lid, which fell over again and hid the horror thing from my sight. The last glimpse I had was of the bloated face, blood-stained and fixed with a grain of malice, which would have held its own in the nethermost of hell. I thought what should be my next move, but my brain seemed to be on fire, and I waited with despairing feeling growing over me. As I waited, I heard in the distance a gypsy song sung by merry voices, coming closer, and another song, the rung of heavy wheels and the cracking of whips. The Ziskini and the Slovaks of whom the Count had spoken were coming. With the last look around in the box, which contained the vile body, I ran from the place and gained the Count's room, determined to rush out at the morning. The door should be opened, with strained ears. I listened and heard downstairs the grinding of the key, in the great lock and the falling back of the heavy door. There must have been some other means of entry. Someone had a key for one of the locked doors, and there came the sound of many feet trampling and dying away in some passage, which sent up a clanging echo. I turned to run down again towards the wall, where I might find a new entrance, but at the moment there seemed to be a violent puff of wind, and the door to the winding stair blew with a shock that set the dust from the intels flying. When I ran to push it open, I found that it was hopelessly fast. I was again a prisoner, and the net doom of it was closing around me more closely. As I write, there is in the passage below the sound of many trampling feet, and the crash of weights being set down heavily, doubtless the boxes with their freight of earth. There was a sound of hammering. It is the box being nailed down. Now I can hear the heavy feet trampling again along the wall, but with many other idle feet coming behind them. The door is shut, and the chains rattle. There is a grinding of keys in the lock. I can hear the key withdraw. Then another door opens and shuts. I hear the creaking of lock and bolt. Hark! In the courtyard, and down the rocky way was the roll of heavy wheels, and the crack of whips, and the chorus of Zizgini as they pass into the distance. I am alone in the castle, and with these awful women. Fa! Mina is a woman, and there is naught in common. There is naught in common. They are devils of the pit. I shall not remain alone with them. I shall try to scale the castle wall faster than I have yet attempted, and I shall take some of the gold with me, lest I want it later. I may find away from this dreadful place, and then away from home. Away to the quickest way in the nearest train away from this cursed spot. From this cursed land, where the devil and his children still walk with earthly feet. At least God's mercy is better than that of these monsters. The precipice is steep and high. At its foot, a man may sleep. As a man, goodbye all, Mina. Chapter 5. Need to take a drink. ちょっと待って。 need better music. This is supposed to be Halloween music, but it's not really spooky. This isn't really Halloween music. Doesn't really seem like it. This seems spooky enough. I still need a drink. Hey, 読みましょう。Forgive my long delay in writing, but I have been simply overwhelmed with work. The life of an assistant school mistress is sometimes tiring, and I am longing to be with you by the sea, where we can talk together freely and build our castles in the air. I've been working very hard lately because I want to keep up with Jonathan's studies, and I have been practicing shorthand very assiduously. When we are married, I shall be able to be useful to Jonathan. And if I can stenograph well enough, I can take down what he wants to say this way and write it out for him on the typewriter, which I am also practicing very hard. He and I sometimes write letters in shorthand, and he is keeping a stenographic journal of his travels abroad. When I am with you, I shall keep a diary in the same way, and I don't mean one of those 2 pages to the week with Sunday squeezed in the corner diaries, but a sort of journal which I can write in whenever I feel inclined. I do not suppose there will be much of interest to other people, but it is not intended for them. I may show it to Jonathan someday if there is anything worth sharing, but it's really an exercise book. I shall try to do what I see lady journalists do, interviewing and writing descriptions and trying to remember conversations I am told with that. With a little practice, one can remember all that goes on or hears said during a day. However, we shall see. I will tell you my little plans when we meet. I have just had a few hurried lines from Jonathan from Transylvania. He is well and will be returning with that in about a week. I am longing to hear all of his news. It must be so nice to see strange countries. I wonder if I mean Jonathan and I, shall ever see them together. There is the 10 o'clock bell ringing. Goodbye, your loving, Mina. Hello. Hola. ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien. Estoy leyendo Dracula. Genial. Tell me all the news that you write. You have not told me anything for a long time. I hear rumors, especially of a tall, handsome, curly-haired man. Letter. Lucy Westenra to Minnie Murray. Well, 9th of May. My dear Smina, I must say you taxed me very unfairly with being a bad correspondent. I write to you twice since we parted, and your last letter is only your second. Besides, I have nothing to tell you. There's nothing to interest you. Town is very pleasant just now, and we go to a good deal of picture galleries for walks and rides in the park. As to the tall curly-haired man, I suppose it was the one who was with me at the last pop. Someone was evidently telling tales. That was Mr. Homewood. He often comes to see us, and he and Mama get on very well together, and they have so many things to talk about in common. We met some time ago. A man that would do just do for you, if we're not already engaged to Jonathan. He has an excellent party, being handsome and well off, and a good berth. He is a doctor and really clever, just fancy. He is only 9 and 20, and he has immense lunatic asylum under his own care. Mr. Homewood introduced him to me, and he called here to see us, and often comes now. I think he is one of the most resolute men I ever saw, and yet the most calm. He seems absolutely impenetrable. I can fancy what a wonderful power he must have over his patients. He has a curious habit of looking one straight in the face, as if trying to read one's thoughts. He tries this on very much with me, but I flatter him to myself if he has got a tough nut to crack. I know that from my class. Do you ever try to read your own face? I do, and I can tell you, it is not a bad study and gives you more trouble than you can well fancy if you never tried it. He says that I afford him a curious psychological study, and I humbly think I do. I do not, as you know, take sufficient interest in dress to be able to describe the new fashion. Dress is a bore. That is the slang again. But never mind. Arthur says that every day it is all out, Mina. And have told our secrets to each other. And ever since we were children, we have slept together and eaten together, and laughed and cried together. And now, though I have spoken, I would like to speak more. Oh, Mina, can't you guess? I love him. I am blushing as I write. Although I think he loves me, he has not told me these words. But oh, Mina, I love him. I love him. I love him. There, that does me good. I wish I were there with you, sitting by the fire, undressing as we used to sit. And I will try to tell you what I feel. I do not know how I am writing this even to you. I am afraid to stop, or I shall tear up the letter. and I don't want to stop. For I do, so as I want to tell you, let me hear from you at once, and tell me what you think about it. Mina, I must stop. Good night. Bless me in your prayers, Mina. Pray for my happiness. Lucy. P.S. I tell you, if this is a secret, good night again. May 24th. My dearest Mina, thanks, and thanks again for your sweet letter. It was nice to be able to tell you and to have sympathy. My dear, it never rains but it pours. How true the old proverbs are. Here I am, who shall be 20 in September, and yet never had a proposal till today. Not a real proposal, and today I had 3. Just fancy. 3 proposals in one day. Isn't it awful? I feel sorry and truly sorry for 2 of the poor fellows. Oh, Mina, I am so happy that I don't know what to do with myself. And 3 proposals. But for goodness sakes, don't tell any of the girls, as they would be getting all sorts of extravagant ideas and imagining themselves injured and slighted as if in their first day at home they do not get 6 at least. Some girls are so vain. You and I, Mina, who are engaged and going to settle down soon, soberly into old married women, can despise vanity. Well, I must tell you about the 3, but you must keep it a secret, dear, from everyone, except of course Jonathan. You will tell him, because I would, if I were in your place, certainly tell Arthur. A man ought to tell her husband everything. Don't you think so, dear? Well, I must be fair. Men like women, certainly their wives, to be quite sure, as far as they are. And women, I'm afraid, are not always quite as fair as they should be. Well, my dear, number 1 just came before lunch. I told you of him, Dr. John Seward, the lunatic asylum man. I scrolled down and lost my place. The lunatic asylum man, with the strong jaw and the good forehead. He was very cool outward, but was nervous at the same time. He had evidently been schooling himself as to all sorts of little things and remembered them, but he almost managed to sit down on his silk hat, which men don't generally do when they are cool. When he had wanted to appear at ease, he kept playing with the lancet in a way that made me nearly scream. He spoke to me, Mina, straightforwardly. He told me how dear it was for him. He had known me so little, and what his life would be with me to help, to cheer him up. He was going to tell me how unhappy he would be if I did not care for him, but when he saw me cry, he said that he was a brute and he would not add to my present trouble. And he broke off and asked if I could love him in time, and he shook my head. I shook my head, and his hands trembled. And with some hesitation, he asked me if I cared already for anyone else. He put it very nicely, saying that he did not want to wring my confidence from me, but only know, because if a woman's heart was free, a man might have hope. And then, I felt sort of a duty to tell him that there was someone. I only told him that, but then he stood up and looked very strong, gave me a look very grave, and he took my both hands in his, and he said, I hoped I would be happy, and that if I ever wanted a friend, I must count him one of my best. Oh, Mina, dear, I can't help crying, and you must excuse this letter being all blotted. Being proposed to is all very nice, and all that sort of thing, but it isn't a happy thing when you have to see a poor fellow you know loves you going away and going all broken-hearted. And to that, no matter what he might say at the moment, we are passing quite out his life. My dear, I must stop it here at present. I feel so miserable, though I am so happy. evening. Arthur is just gone and I feel better in spirits than when I have left off. So I can go on telling you about the day when my dear number 2 came after lunch. He was such a nice fellow, an American from Texas, and he looked so young at first that it seemed almost impossible that he has been to so many places and had such adventures. I sympathize with poor Desdemona when she had such a dangerous dream poured in her ears, even by a black man. I suppose that you women are such cowards that we think a man will save us from fear, so we marry him. I know now what I would do if I were a man and wanted to make a girl love me. No, I don't. For there was Mr. Morris telling us his stories, and Arthur never told any yet. My dear, I am somewhat grievous. Mr. Quincy P. Morris found me alone. It seems that a man always does find a girl alone. No, he doesn't, for Arthur tried to make a chance, and I helping him all I could. I am ashamed to say it now. I must tell you beforehand that Mr. Morris doesn't always speak slang. That is to say, he never does so to strangers, or before them, for he was well educated and has exquisite manners. But he found that it amused me to hear him talk American slang, and whenever I was present, there was no one to be shocked, and he said such funny things. I am afraid, my dear, he has to bend it all, for it fits exactly into whatever he has to say. But this is the way slang has. I do not know myself if I shall ever speak slang. I do not know if Arthur likes it, as if I never heard him use any yet. Well, Mr. Morris sat down beside me and looked happy and jolly as he could, but I could see all the same that he was very nervous. He took my hand in his and said ever so sweetly, Miss Lucy, I know I ain't good enough to regulate the fixins of your little shoes, but I guess if you wait until you find a man, that is, you will go join them, 7 young women with the lamps, when you quit. Won't you just hitch up alongside me? Let us go down the long road together, driving in double harness. Well, he did look so good-humored and so jolly that it didn't seem half so hard to refuse him as it did poor Mr. Seward. So I had said, as lightly as I could, that I did not know anything of hitching, and that I wasn't broken to harness at all yet. He said he had spoken in a light manner, and he hoped that if he had made a mistake in doing so grave, so momentous, on an occasion for him, I would forgive him. He really did look serious when he was saying it, and I couldn't help feeling a bit serious too. I know, Mina, you will think me a horrid flirt, though I couldn't help feeling a sort of exultation that he was number 2 in one day. And then, my dear, before I could say a word, he began pouring out a perfect torrent of lovemaking, saying his very heart and soul at my feet. He looked so earnest over it that I shall never again think that man must be playful always, never earnest, because he was merry at times. I suppose if he saw something in my face, checked with him, for he suddenly stopped and said with any sort of fervor that I could love him, for I'd been free. Lucy, you are an honest-hearted... Lucy, you are an honest-hearted girl. I know I should not be here speaking to you as I am now. I did not believe you cling grit right through the very depths of your soul. Tell me, like one good fellow to another, is there anyone else that you care for? Is there I'll never trouble you a hair's breadth again. But you will be, if you let me be, a very faithful friend. My dear Mino, why are men so noble when we women are so little worthy of them? Here I was, almost making fun of this great-hearted true gentleman. I burst into tears, and I'm afraid, my dear, you will think this a very sloppy letter in more ways than one. I felt very badly. Why can't they let a girl marry 3 men, or as many as her want her, and save all this trouble? But this is heresy, and I must not say it. I am glad to say that, though I was crying, I was able to look into Mr. Morris's brave eyes and told him out straight. Yes, there is someone I love, though he has not told me yet that he even loves me. I was right to speak to him so frankly. For quite a light came into his eyes, and he put out both of his hands and took mine. I think I put them into his. He said in a hearty way. That's my brave girl. It's better be worth being late for a chance of winning you than being in time for any other girl in the world. Don't cry, my dear. If it's for me, I'm a hard nut to crack, and I take it standing up. If that other fellow doesn't know his happiness, well, he'd better look for it soon, or he'll have to deal with me. Little girl, your honesty and pluck have made me a friend, and that's rarer than any love. It's unselfish, anyhow, my dear, and I'm going to have a pretty lonely walk between this and Kingdom Come. Won't you give me one kiss? It'll be something to keep all the darkness off the darkness now and then. You can, you know, if you like. For that other good fellow, he must be a good fellow, my dear, and a fine fellow, or you could not love him. Hasn't spoken yet. That quite won me, you know, for it was so brave and sweet of him, and noble to a rival, wasn't it? And he was so sad, so I leant over and kissed him. He stood up with my 2 hands in his, and he looked into my eyes. I'm afraid I was blushing very much, he said. Little girl, I hold your hands and you've kissed me, and if these things don't make us friends, nothing ever will. Thank you for your sweet honesty to me, and goodbye. He wrung his hands, and taking up his hat, went straight out of the room, looking back, and without a tear or a quiver or a pause. And I am crying like a baby. Oh, why must a man like that ever be made me happy when there are lots of girls out there who would worship the ground he trod on? I know I would if I were free. Only I don't want to be free, my dear. This quite upset me, and I feel I cannot write it of happiness once. After telling you of it, I do not wish to tell you the number 3 until it can all be happy. P.S. Oh, and about number 3, I needn't tell you of number 3, need I? Besides, I was all so confused. It seemed only a moment from his coming into the room till both his arms were around me that he was kissing me. And I am very, very happy, and I don't know what I have done to deserve it. I must only be tried in the future to show that I am not ungrateful to God for all his goodness to me in sending me such a lover and such a husband and such a friend. Goodbye. "25th of May. Ebb tide and appetite today. Cannot eat, cannot rest, so diary instead. Since my rebuff of yesterday, I have sort of empty feeling. Nothing in the world seems to be sufficient importance to be worth doing. As I knew that the only cure for this sort of thing was work, I went down amongst the patients. I picked out one who has afforded me the study of interest. He is so quaint that I am determined to understand him as well as I can. Today, I seem to get nearer than ever before to the heart of his mystery. I questioned him more fully than I had ever done, with a view to making myself master of the facts of his hallucination. In my manner of doing it there was, I now see, something of cruelty. I seemed to wish to keep him to the point of his madness, a thing which I avoid with the patience, as I would the mouth of hell. Memo. Under what circumstances would I not avoid the pit of hell? Omnia Romeo Vanilla sunt. Hell has its price. For Sep. There be anything behind this instinct, it will be valuable to trace afterwards accurately, so I had better commence to do, therefore. Sanguine temperament, great physical strength, morbidly excitable, periods of gloom, ending in some fixed idea which I cannot make out. I presume that the sanguine temperament itself, and the disturbing influence, and in a mentally accomplished, finished. A possibly dangerous man, probably dangerous if unselfish. In selfish men, caution is as secure an armor for their foes as for themselves. What I think on this point, when oneself is the fixed point of the centripetal force, is balanced with the centrifugal. When duty, a cause, etc., is a fixed point, the latter force is paramount, and only accidents or a series of accidents can balance it out. We told yarns by the campfire, in the prairies, and just one... Well, let Quincy P. Horace to Honorable Arthur homeward. We told yarns by the campfire, the prairies, and dressed one another's room after another, landing at the Marquess, in drunk health on the shore to Titicaca. And there are more yarns to be told, and another wounds to be healed, and another health to be drunk. Won't you let this be at my campfire tomorrow night? I have no hesitation in asking you, as I know a certain lady is engaged to a certain dinner party. And that you are free. There will only be one another. Our old palate, the Korea, Jack Seward, he's coming out, and both want to mingle our weeps over the wine cup, and to drink the health will all our hearts to be the happiest man in all the wide world, who has the noblest heart that God has made, and the best worth winning. We promise you a hearty welcome, and a loving greeting, and a health as true as our own heart. We shall both swear to leave you at home if you drink too deep a certain pair of eyes. Come. Yours as ever, Quincy P. Morris. Telegram for Arthur Homeward to Quincy P. Morris. Count me every time I bear messages which will make both your ears tingle. Chapter 6. Mina Murray's Journal. Just a quick break. I think today I'll read until 4 p.m. So after about 45 minutes. 明日は土曜日です。 Because tomorrow is Saturday. That'll be Yakuza. I'm going to take a bathroom break. I'll be right back.はい、お待たせしました。Want to check something real quick. Okay, so let's continue. We're on chapter 6. When Lucy met me at the station looking sweeter... Oh, this is from Mina Murray's journal. Hey. When Lucy met me at the station looking sweeter and lovelier than ever, we drove up to the house at the Crescent, in which they have rooms. This is a lovely place, and a little river, the Esk, runs through a deep valley which broadens as it comes near the harbor. A great viaduct runs across, with high pliers through which the view seemed somehow further away than it really is. The valley is beautifully green, and it is so steep that when you are on the high land on either side, you look right across it, unless you are near enough to see down. The houses of the old town, a side far away from us, are all red-roofed, and it seemed piled up on the river, piled up on the one over another. Anyhow, like the pictures we see of the Nuremberg, right over the town is the ruin of Whitby Abbey, which was stacked by Danes, and which is a scene of a part of Marmion, where the girl is built up on the wall. It is a most noble ruin of immense size, and full of beauty and romantic bits. There is a legend that a white lady is seen in one of the windows between it, and there's another church in the parish, one round which is a big graveyard, all full of tombstones. This is, to my mind, the nicest spot in Whitby, for it lies right over the town and has a full view of the harbor, all up the bay, to where the headline called Kettleness stretches out into the sea. It descends so steeply over the harbor that part of the bank has fallen away and some of the graves have been destroyed. In one part of the town, one part of the stonework of the graves stretches out over the sandy pathway far below. There are walks with seats beside them through the churchyard, and people go and sit there all day long looking at the beautiful view and enjoying the breeze. I shall come and sit here often myself and work indeed. I am writing now, with my book on my knees, and listening to the talk of 3 old men who are sitting beside me. They seem to do nothing all day but sit up here and talk. The harbor lies below me, with, on the far side, one long granite wall stretching into the sea, with a curve outwards into the end at the end of it. In the middle of it, of which is a lighthouse, a heavy sea wall runs along outside of it. On the near side, the sea wall makes an elbow crooked inversely, and its end too has a lighthouse. Between the two piers, there is a narrow opening into the harbor, which then suddenly widens. It is nice at high water, and when the tide is out, it shows away to nothing, and there is merely the streak of the Esk running between banks of sand, with rocks in here and there. Outside the harbor, on this side, there rises for about a half mile a great reef, the sharp edges of which may run straight out from behind the south lighthouse. At the end of it is a buoy with a bell, which swings in bad weather and sends a mournful sound on the wind. They have a legend here that when a ship is lost, bells are heard out sea. I must ask the old man about this when he is coming this way. He is a funny old man. He must be awfully old, for his face is all gnarled and twisted like the bark of a tree. He tells me that he is nearly 100, and that he was a sailor in the Greenland fishing fleet. When Waterloo was fought, he is, I'm afraid, a very skeptical person, for when I asked him about the bells at the sea and the White Lady, the Abbey said very brusquely, "I wouldn't fash messel about them, miss." Them things be all worn out. Mind. And I don't say they ever was. But I do say that they wasn't in my time. They be all very well for comers and trippers and the like, but not for that lady like you. Them feet folks from York and Leeds that be always eating curd herrings and drinking tea and looking out to buy the cheap jet with Creedot. And I wonder, Messel, who'd be bother telling lies to them? Even the newspapers, which full of fool talk. I thought he'd be a good person to learn interesting things from, so I asked him if he would mind telling me something about that whale fishing in the old days. He was just settling himself to begin when the clock struck 6, whereupon he labored to get up and said, I must gain words home now, miss. The granddaughter doesn't like to be kept waiting when the tea is ready, for it takes time to crumble on the greens. For there be many of them, and miss, I lack billy timber, sarily by the clock. He hobbled away, and I could see him hurrying as well as he could down the steps. The steeps are a great feature of the place. They led from the town up to the church. There are hundreds of them. I do not know how many, and they wind up in a delicate curve. The slope is so gentle that a horse could easily walk up and down them. I think they must be originally had something to do with the abbey. I shall go home too. Lucy went out visiting with her mother, and they were only duty calls. I did not go. They will be home by this. Okay. 1st of August. I came up here an hour ago with Lucy, and we had a most interesting talk with my old friend and the 2 other who always come and join them. He's evidently the sure oracle of them, and I should think that I have been in this time a most dictatorial person. He will not admit anything and downfaces everybody. If you can't out-argue them, he bullies them, and he takes their silence for agreement with his views. Lucy was looking sweetly pretty in her white lawn frock. She had got a beautiful color since she had been there. I noticed that the old man did not lose any time in coming up and sitting near her when she sat down. She is so sweet with the old people. I think they fell in love with her on the spot. Even my old man succumbed and did not contradict her, but gave me a double share instead. I cut him on the subject of the legends, and he went off at once into a sort of sermon. I must try to remember and put it all down. It be old fool talk, lock, stock, and barrel. That's what it be. And naught else. These bends and wafts, and bogosts, and bargists, and bogles, and all on it, them is only fit to set barons and dizzy women of Eldrin. They be not but airblibs. Then they all grims up. Signs and warnings be all invented by parsons. All in some book bodies and railways touters to scare and scunner helflins, and to get folks to do something that they don't other inclined to do. It makes me ireful to think of them. Why, it's them that, not content with printing lies on paper and preaching them out of pulpit, does want to be gotten them on the tombstones. Look here all around you in what to be ye will. All them steens holding up, their heads as well as they can out the pride account, simply tumbling down with the weight that lies on them. Here lies the body, or sacred to the memory, or in all of them, and yet in nigh half all of them, there being no bodies at all. The memories of them being cared a pitch of snuff about, much less. Sacred lies, all of them. Nothing but lies, of one of a kind or another. One kind or another, my gog. It'll be queer scowl dement at the day of judgment, when they come tumbling up their death socks, all grouped together and trying to drag their tombstones with them to prove how good they was. Some of them trembling and dithering, with their hands that thousand and slippy from lying in the sea that they can't even keep their grip with them. I could see the old fellow's self-satisfied air, and in the way in which he looked around for the approval of his cronies, that was showing off. So I put in a word to keep him going. "Oh, Mr. Swells, you can't be serious. Surely these tombstones are not all wrong." "Yablins, there may be a poorest few not wrong, seven where they make out the people to be good. But there be folk that do think a bramble like the sea, if only be their own good, their own. The whole thing be only lies. Now look here. You come here, stranger, and you see this Kirkgarth." I nodded, for what I thought better to assent, though I did not quite understand his dialect, and I knew it had something to do with the church. He went on, "And you can state that all these stains be a boon folk that be happened here." Snod and snog. I assented again. "Then that be just where the lie comes in. Why, there be scores of these lay beds that be tombs as old Doon's back a box on Friday night." He nudged one of his companions, and they all laughed. And my gog, how could they be otherwise? Look at that one. Yep, after laughed. The beer bank. Read it. I went over and read. Edward Benchlock, master mariner, murdered by pirates off the coast of Andres, April 18th, 54, 8:30. When I came back, Mr. Swallows went on. "Who brought him home? I wonder had to happen here. Murdered off the coast of Andres. You constated his body lay under. Why, I could name ye a dozen whose bones lie in the Greenland sand seas above." He pointed northwards, or where the currents may have drifted them. "There be the stains around ye. You can, but with young eyes I read the small print of the lies from here. The Rathwaite Lurie, I knew his father, lost in the lively off Greenland in 20, or Andrew Woodhouse, drowned in the same season, 1777, or John Paxton, drowned off Cape Farewell a year later. All John Rawlings, whose grandfather sailed with me, drowned in the Gulf of Finland in 50. Do you think that these men will make a rush to Whitby when the trumpet sounds? I have me anthems about it. I tell ye that when they got here, they'd be jostling and jostling one another, the way that it'd be like a fight up on the ice in the old days, when we'd be at another from the daylight to dark, and trying to tie our cuts by the light of the Aurora Borealis. This was evidently local pleasantry, for the old man cackled over, and his cronies joined in with gusto. But, as I said, Shirley, you are not quite correct, for you start on the assumption that all the poor people, for their spirits, will have to take their tombstones with them on the Day of Judgment. Do you think that will be really necessary? Well, what else be they tombstones for? Answer me that, miss. To please their relatives, I suppose. To please their relatives, you suppose. This he had said with intense scorn. How will it be pleasure to the relatives to know that lies is wrote over them, and that everybody in the place knows that they be lies. He pointed to a stone at our feet, which had been laid down on a slab of which the seat was rested, close to the edge of the cliff. Read the lies on that thrush stain, he said. The letters were upside down to me from where I sat, but Lucy was more opposite to them, so I leant over and read. I'm trying to get it on screen. Sacred to the memory. Okay. Here. Sacred to the memory of George Cannon, who died in the hope of glorious resurrection on July 29th, 1873, falling from the rocks at Kettleness. His tomb was erected by his sorrowing mother to a dearly beloved son. He was the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Really, Mr. Swales, I don't see anything funny in that. She spoke her comment very gravely and somewhat severely. You don't see aught funny, haha. But that's because you don't. Gone, the sorrowing mother of a hellcat, was a hellcat that hated him because he was a regular limiter. He was, and he hated her so that he committed suicide in order that she mightn't get insured, and she put on his life. He blew at the top of his head with an old musket that he had to scare crows with. Trying for crows, then, where it brought the clegs and the dopstain. That's the way he fell for off the rocks, in the hopes of a glorious resurrection. I've often heard him say, Maisel, that he'd hoped he'd go to hell for his mother. Was so pious that she's sure she'd go to heaven, and he wouldn't want to edle where she was. Now isn't that Stain? At any rate, he hammered back with his stick as he spoke. A pack of lies. And it wouldn't make Gabriel kickle when Jordy comes patting up the grease with the tombstone balanced on his hump. I'd ask it to be took as evidence. I did not know what to say, but Lucy turned the conversation, and she said, rising up, "Oh, why do you tell us this? It is my favorite seat, and I cannot leave it. And now I must go on sitting over the grave of a suicide." That won't harm you, my pretty. And it may make poor Geordie gladsome to have so trim lass sitting on his lap. That won't hurt you. Why, I've sat here off and on for nigh 20 years past, and it hasn't done me no harm. Don't ye fasten about them as your lies under ye. Well, it doesn't lie there, either. It'll be time for ye to get and start when you see the tombstone all run away with, and the place is bare as a stubble field. There's the clock, and I must gang my service to the ladies, and off he hobbled. Lucy and I sat a while, and it was all so beautiful before us that we took hands as we sat, and she told me over and over about Arthur and their coming marriage, and that made me a little heartsick, for I haven't heard from Jonathan for a whole month. The same day I came up here alone. I am very sad. There was no letter from you. I hope there cannot be anything the matter with Jonathan. The clock has struck 9, and I see the lights scattered all over town. Sometimes sometimes the road where the streets are, and sometimes singly. They run up the Esk and die away the curve of the valley. To my left, the view is cut off by a black line of roof of the old house next to the abbey. The sheep and lambs are bleating in the fields behind me, and there was a clatter of donkeys' hooves up the paved road below. The band on the pier is playing a harsh waltz in a good time. And further along the quay, there is a Salvation Army meeting in a back street. Neither of the bands hear the other, but up here I hear and see them both. I wonder where Jonathan is, if he is thinking of me. I wish he were here. of June, Dr. Seward's diary. The case of Renfield grows more interesting as I get to understand the man. He has certain qualities, very largely developed, of selfishness, secrecy, and purpose. I wish I could get at what the object of the latter. He seems to have some settled scheme of his own, but what it is I do not know yet. His redeeming quality is a love of animals, though indeed he has such curious turns in that I sometimes imagine he is only abnormally cruel. His pets are of odd sorts. Just now his hobby is catching flies. He has at present such a quantity that I have had myself to expostulate. To my astonishment, he did not break into a fury as I expected, but he took the matter into simple seriousness. He thought for a moment, and then said, May I have 3 days? I shall clear them away, of course. I said I would do. I must watch him. He has turned his mind now to spiders, and he has got several big fellows in a box. He keeps feeding them with his flies, and the number of the latter becoming sensibly diminished, although he has used half his food in attracting more flies from outside his room. His spiders are now becoming a great nuisance as his flies, and to the day I told him he must get rid of them. He looked very sad at this, and I said he must be clear of some of them. At all events, he cheerfully acquiesced in this. And I gave him the same time before a reduction. He disgusted me while with him from when a horrid blowfly, bloated with some carrion food, buzzed into the room and he caught it. He held it exultantly for a few moments between his fingers and thumb. And before I knew what he was going to do, he put it in his mouth and ate it. I scolded him for it, and he argued quietly that it was very good and very wholesome, and that it was life, strong life, and gave him life. This gave me an idea, or the rudiment of one. I must watch how he gets rid of his spiders. He was evidently some deep problem in his mind, for he keeps a little notebook for which he's always jotting down something. Whole pages of it are filled with masses of figures, generally single numbers, added up batches, and then the totals added up in batches again, although if you're focusing on some accounts, as the auditors put it. 8th of July. My foot fell asleep. I think this will be the last chapter for today. I want to finish on the next chapter. The beginning of the next chapter. So it'll be easier to find. So it should be chapter 7. Okay. How much longer is that? You're right here. There's a method in his madness, and the rudimentary idea in my mind is growing. It'll be a whole idea soon, and then, oh, unconscious celebration. You'll have to give the wall to your conscious brother. I kept away from my friend for a few days, so I might notice if there were any change. Things remained as they were, except he had parted with some of his pets and got a new one. He has managed to get a sparrow, and has already partially tamed it. This means of taming is simple, for already the spiders have diminished. Those that do remain, however, are well fed, for he still brings in the flies and tempting them with his food. 19th of July. We are progressing, my friend. There's now a whole colony of sparrows, and his flies and spiders are almost obliterated. When I came in, he ran to me and said he wanted to ask me a great favor, a very, very great favor. As he spoke, he fawned on me like a dog. I asked him what it was, and he said it with a sort of rapture in his voice and bearing. A kitten. A nice little kitten. A nice little, sleek, playful kitten that I can play with and teach and feed and feed and feed. I was not unprepared for this request, as I had noticed how his pets went on increasing in size and vivacity. I did not care that his petty family of tame sparrows should be wiped out in the same manner as the flies and the spiders, so I said I would see about it and asked him if he would rather not have a cat than a kitten. His eagerness betrayed him as he answered. Oh yes, I would like a cat. I only asked for a kitten lest you should refuse me a cat. No one would refuse me a kitten, would they? I shook my head and said that at present I feared it would not be possible, but that I would see about it. His face fell, and I could see a warning of danger in it, for there was a sudden fierce, sidelong look which meant killing. The man is undeveloped, homicidal maniac. I shall test him with his present craving, and see how well it worked out for him. It will work out for him. I shall know more. 10 p.m. I have visited him again, and found him sitting in the corner brooding. When I came in, he threw himself on his knees before and I implored him to let him have a cat, and that his salvation depended on it. I was firm, however, and told him that he could not have it, whereupon he went on without a word. I sat down, gnawing his finger. He sat down, gnawing his fingers. The patient. I was firm, however, and told him he could not have it, whereupon he went on without a word, and sat down, gnawing his fingers, in the corner where I had found them. I shall see him in the morning early. Visited Renfield early, very early, before the attendant went his rounds. Found him up and humming a tune. He was spreading out his sugar, which he had saved in the window, and was manifestly beginning his fly catching again, and beginning it cheerfully with good grace. I looked around for birds, and could not see them. And not seeing them, I asked him what they were. He replied without turning around, that they had all flown away. There were a few feathers about the room, on his pillow, and a drop of blood. I said nothing, but went on, and told the keeper to report me if there was anything odd about him during the day. The attendant had just said to me that Renfield has been very sick and has disgorged a lot of feathers. My belief is, doctor, that he has eaten the birds and he just took and ate them raw. Oh no. I gave Renfield a strong opiate tonight, enough to make even him sleep. And I took away his pocketbook to look at. The thought that has been buzzing around my brain lately is complete, and the theory proved. My homicidal maniac is of a peculiar kind. I shall have to invent a new classification for him and call him a zoophagist, life-eating maniac. And what he desires is to absorb many lives as he can. And he has laid himself out to achieve it in a cumulative way. Cumulative way. Gave many flies to one spider and many spiders to one bird, and then wanted a cat to eat the many birds. Well, to complete the experiment, a vivisection and look at his results today. Why not advance science in the most difficult and vital aspect, the knowledge of the brain? Had I even the secret of one such of the mind, I did not hold the key to the fancy of even one lunatic. I might advance my own branch of science to pitch compared to which Burton Sanderson's physiology or Ferrier's brain knowledge would be as nothing. If only there were a sufficient cause, I might not think too much of this, or I may be tempted. A good cause might turn the scale with me, for not I'd be too of an exceptional brain, congenitally. How well the reason lunatics always do within their own scope. I wonder how many lives that he values a man, or if he values only one. He has closed the account most accurately, and today begun a new record. How many of us begin a new record with each day of our lives? To me, it seems only yesterday that my whole life ended with new hope, and that truly I began a new record. So it'll be until the great recorder sums me up and closes my ledger account with my balance to profit or loss. Oh, Lucy, I cannot be angry with you, nor can I be angry with my friend, whose happiness is yours. But I must only wait on hopeless and work. If only I could have as strong as a cause as my poor friend there. A good, unselfish cause to make me work. That would be indeed happiness. Mina Murray's Journal, 26th of July. I am anxious, and it suits me to express myself here. It is like whispering to oneself and listening at the same time. And there is always something about the shorthand symbols that make it different from writing. I am unhappy. I'm unhappy about Lucy and about Jonathan. I have not heard from Jonathan for some time, and it was very concerned. But yesterday, dear Mr. Hawkins, who is always so kind, sent me a letter from him, and I had written asking him if he had heard. He said said the enclosed had just been received. It is only a line dated from the Castle Dracula, and that he is just starting for home. This is not like Jonathan. I do not understand it, and it makes me uneasy. Then too, Lucy, although she is so well, and has lately taken to her old habit of walking in her sleep, her mother has spoken to me about it, and we have decided that I am to lock the door of our room every night. Miss Stenra has gotten the idea that sleepwalkers always go out on roofs of houses along the edges of cliffs, and that one suddenly awaken and fall over with despairing cry that echoes all over the place. Poor dear is naturally anxious about Lucy, and she tells me that her husband Lucy's father had the same habit. He would get up on the nights and dress himself and go out. If he would not stop, Lucy is to be married in the autumn, and is already planning out her dresses and how her house is to be arranged. I sympathize with her, for I do the same. Only Jonathan and I will start life in a very simple way, and shall have to try to make both ends meet. Mr. Homewood, he is Honorable Arthur Homewood, only son of Lord Goldamming is coming up here very shortly. As soon as he can leave for his father, it is not very well. I think dear Lucy... As soon as he can leave for... I think dear Lucy is counting the moments till he comes. She wants to take him up to the seat on the churchyard cliff and show him the beauty of Whitby. I dare say it is the waiting which disturbs her. She will be all right when he arrives. "27th of July. No news from Jonathan. I am getting quite uneasy about him. Though, why I should, I do not know. But I do wish that he would write, if it were only a single line. Lucy walks more than ever, and each night I am wakened by her moving about the room. Fortunately, the weather is so hot that she cannot get cold. But still, the anxiety and perpetually being wakened is beginning to tell on me. I am getting nervous and wakeful myself. Thank God, Lucy's health keeps up. Mr. Homewood has been suddenly called to ring Lucia's father, who has been taken seriously ill. Lucy frets at the postponement of seeing him, but does not touch her looks. She's a trifle stouter, and her cheeks are so lovely rose pink that she has lost that anemic look which she had. I pray it will last. 3rd of August. Another week has gone, and no news from Jonathan, not even to Mr. Hawkins, from whom I have heard. Oh, I do hope he is not ill. He surely would have written. I looked at his last letter of his, but somehow it does not satisfy me. It does not read like him, and yet it is his writing. There is no mistake of that. Lucy has not walked much in her sleep last week, but there is an odd concentration about her, which I do not understand. Even in her sleep, she seems to be watching me. She tries to the door, and finding it locked, goes about the room searching for the key. 6th of August. Another 3 days, and no news. The suspense is getting dreadful, and if only I knew where to write to or where to go to, I should feel easier, but no one has heard a word. Jonathan, since that last letter, I only pray to God for patience. Lucy is more excitable than ever, but is otherwise well. Last night was very threatening, and the fishermen say that we are in for a storm. I must try to watch it and learn the weather signs. Today is a gray day, and the sun is, I write, hidden in thick clouds, high over Kettleness. Everything is gray, except the green grass, which seems like emerald amongst it. Gray, earthy rock, gloomy clouds, tinged with the sunburst at the far edge, hang over the gray sea into which the sand points stretch like gray fingers. The sea is tumbling over the shallows, and the sandy flat with the roar muffled in the sea midst drifting inland. The horizon is lost in gray mist. All is vastness. The clouds are piled up like giant rocks, and there is a brool over the sea that sounds like some presage of doom. Dark figures are on the beach here, and they're sometimes half shrouded in the mist, and seems like men like trees walking. The fishing boats are racing for home, and rising up and dip in the ground. Swell as they deep into the harbor, bending into the sculptors. Here comes old Mr. Swales. He is making straight for me, and I can see by the way he lifts his hat that he wants to talk. I have been quite touched by the change in the old man. When he sat down beside me, he said in a very gentle way, "I want to say something about you, miss." I could see he was not at ease, so I took his poor old wrinkled hand in mine and asked him to speak fully so he said, leaving his hand in mine, "I'm afraid, my dearie, that I must have shocked you by all the wicked things I've been saying about the dead and such like for weeks past, but I didn't mean them, and I want you to remember that when I'm gone, we old folks stepped dazzled, and with one foot above the crook hole. Don't altogether think of it like to think of it. We don't want to feel scared of it, and that's why I took to making light of it, so that I cheered up my own heart a bit. But Lord love you, miss, I ain't afraid of dying, and I not one bit, and I don't want to die if I can help it. My time must be nigh at hand now, for I'll be old, and 100 years is too much for any man to expect. I'm so nigh that it be the old man is already wetting his life, and see, I can't get out the habit of coughing about it all at once. The chaps still wag as they used to. Someday soon, the angel of death will sound his trumpet for me, but don't ye do ungreet my dearie, for he saw that I was crying. If he should come this very night, I don't refuse to answer his call, for life be, after all, only waiting for someone else than what we're doing, and death shall be all that. We can rightly depend on it, but I'm content, for it's coming to me, dearie, my dearie, and coming quick. It may be coming a while. We're looking for it. I'm wondering. Maybe it's in wind out over the sea that's bringing with it lost and wrecked and sore distress and sad hearts. Look, look, he cried suddenly. There's something in the wind that there's something in the wind in the host beyond that sounds and looks, tastes like, smells like death. It's in the air. I feel it coming. Lord, make me answer cheerfully when my call comes. He held up his arms and devoutly raised his hat, his mouth as though he were praying, and after a few minutes silence, he got up, shook hands with me, and blessed me, and said goodbye and hobbled off. It all touched me and upset me very much. I was glad when the Coast Guard came along with his spyglass under his arm. He stopped to talk to me, as he always does, but at the time kept looking at strange ship. I can't make her out, he said. She's a Russian, by the looks of her, but she's knocking about in the queerest way. She doesn't know her mind a bit. She seems to see the stork coming, but I can't decide whether to run up north in the open or to put it here. Look there again. She steered. Might have strangely, for she doesn't mind the hand on the wheel. It changes about with every puff of wind. We'll hear more of her before this time tomorrow. Okay. Chapter 7 is next week. 今日も見てくれてありがとうございます。時間も見に来てくれるとありがたい。Thank you for watching today. I hope you watch again next time too. Gracias por mirar. Espero que venga a verme la próxima vez. 次回は明日です。Next time will be tomorrow. Hopefully at 11 a.m. 次回は明日の11時から開始します。And the next week will be chapter 7. We'll be starting from chapter 7. Thank you for watching and thank you for lurking. では、終了。お疲れ。バイバイ。